Welcome to The Family Business, a podcast about football and life from the perspective of a coach and his daughter. I'm Stephanie Turner, and I'm here with my dad, Norv Turner. Today on the show, we have NFL senior writer for The Athletic, Mike Sando. Hey, Mike. It's nice to finally meet you.
It's an honor to be on this thing. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So I've never met you. I've heard your name a lot because in retirement, my dad has, I don't know, a dozen guys that he has on this sort of regular call rotation. He sits in his chair and watches games and throughout the week, I hear him on the phone. I'm like, oh, or my mom will hear him on the phone. Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? And there's name Mike Sando has come up a lot. And I'm like, who's Mike Sando? And so over the years, you've kind of grown to be one of his regular, football buddies, and talking about what do you guys talk about?
Well, just fun stuff that's going on. You know, I really haven't known Coach that long. I think maybe 10 years or so when he was with the Vikings, we got together. But when he's coaching, there's not as much time. They're just so pressed for time that you get a guy in the off season or in a bye week or not as regularly. So it's just been great these last few years that he's mostly been out. He got lured back last year, but mostly been out. It's just fun because he's got so much insight, knowledge, stories, perspectives, and I'm just a learner here. I really enjoy learning from the people who know, and there's really nobody that has probably the experience that your dad has. So he's great, and he's got a great sense of humor. And I know how just to kind of push his buttons a little bit to get him going.
Yeah,
and that's always fun too.
Well, we have a little bit of a different setup this week. For anyone who's watching, you'll notice my dad's not here with me. I'm alone in studio. Dad, you there on Zoom? Hello, Dad?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm down. We have a little delay working. I'm down here in South Carolina, so I'm doing the best to stay up.
Yeah, so my parents have been on a little bit of an East Coast tour. They were with my brother, who's Scott, who's at the Jets, and his wife and kids, and my niece and nephew, and spent some time there, and got to go to a football game. And then they just went down to South Carolina, and now they're with my other brother, Drew, who's working at University of South Carolina. He's Drew, let me see if I can get your job title right. VP of Premium Ticket Sales Seats. He works with Legends and is overseeing this stadium remodel, which is a really cool, fun, exciting project. So go Gamecocks. So he's down in South Carolina, not in studio with us. So we have a little bit of a different setup, but we're going to get through it. But so Mike.
And Mike, I just so you know, there's nothing like seeing these, we talk about these guys, you watch them on TV, you watch tape, but there's nothing like seeing them in person. And we went to with Scott's wife, and Nancy and I went to the Jets against Dallas in New York on Sunday. And the one guy, because we have different conversations all the time about all these different quarterbacks, the guy who was really, really impressive was Dak. I mean, he's playing with a great sense of urgency. He was accurate with the ball. They're doing a great job doing the things he does best. So it was exciting to see him in person. It's always good to see these guys in person. When you're coaching, you see one of them every week. But he was impressive watching.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about that is, when Jerry Jones made the change from Mike McCarthy and didn't go after the sexy young coordinator or whatever, he got Brian Schottenheimer was right there, and people were like, "Oh, Jerry," I said, "That's not going to be a bad thing for the offense necessarily. I think Schottenheimer's done a pretty good job offensively. Obviously, they need some help on the defense, and the head coaching job is beyond that. But Dak is playing great, and I'm not going to say it's just Schott either, because 2 years ago, the last year Dak was healthy a whole year, he was second in the MVP voting. So Dak has played well before. Do you see something that's a little different now with him?
I think he's playing quicker. I think he's getting the ball out of his hand extremely quick. There's a real sense of urgency. I think Brian Schottenheimer, they're doing a good job with the quick passing game. And people think the quick passing game is 1, 2, 3 and throw it. No, it's getting the ball in your hand quick, spreading the field, even play action, getting the ball out. There's short receivers, someone to get the ball to fast. I know they have a lot of offensive linemen out. So just being a complete quarterback and doing what you're asked to do at a high level.
Yep.
So and we can get more into games and recent games and stuff a little bit later in the conversation. I kind of wanted to start, Mike, just talking to you about kind of how you got started in this industry and as a sports writer and journalist, and just hear a little bit about the teams that you worked, that you covered early on, and share this perspective too of a coach's kid. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of dive into how we see each other, right? Like us coaches' families looking at sports writers, and sports writers looking at coaches and families and all that.
So I started out answering phones on Friday nights at the Spokesman Review newspaper in Spokane, Washington, in 1991. Okay, so that was my foot in the door. I was finishing up college in that area, and the high school coaches would call in with the box score information. That's how it got in the newspaper back then. Mm-hmm. And so they'd have some slappy like me, nervous to even take the call. It'd be some coach after a loss or something. So you take that in, and really I went from that to internships to covering small high schools and small colleges, and then I got really lucky when I was about 27 years old. They couldn't find anybody who wanted to move to Pullman, Washington, to cover the Washington State beat, which was the big beat. And so this job came open, Coach, I didn't even apply for it because I didn't even assume that I would be considered on my experience. But there's a bunch of older guys in the sports department, their wives didn't want to move down to Pullman, or whatever. So I get this job, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was covering, it was a Pac-10 back then. And it was just thrilling. And it happened to be the year that maybe my second year was the year that they went to the Rose Bowl. They had Ryan Leaf. So they really got on the map, and I got to, and that kind of launched me a little bit with some help from friends I'd worked with to replace John Clayton at the Tacoma paper covering the Seahawks in the NFL. So that's 1998. And pretty soon Mike Holmgren was covering the team. So I learned a lot from, just being around a long time. And I think, my perspective, though, has shifted as I've gotten older and more experience to probably understand better, what the coaches' families go through, what the coaches go through, how incomplete of information we're dealing with on the outside. And I think when you look at the coach, the coach in football is constantly questioned by people with strong opinions but incomplete information. And it doesn't matter if it's their kids, it's the team owner, it's the neighbor, it's the fan calling in the radio show, it's the reporter. And I think I've just gained an appreciation for that over time as I've gotten to know more coaches, to just be a little bit more considered or careful when you're asking the questions, because you're really, like Coach Jim Morris said, if you've ever seen that great quote, you think you know, but you really don't know. It's one of my favorite quotes. Yeah. Because, and so I think that's helped me with coaches going into it with the idea of, hey, kind of through your tone and your words, you got to convey that you don't think you know the whole thing, because you just don't. The coaches can't even say the things publicly that are affecting some of the things that are going on. So what I've tried to do is figure out.
Thank you for saying that.
Figure out and understand that stuff the best that I can, and sort of almost know what not to say as much as what to say, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's, as a kid growing up, especially because my dad was a head coach for so much of my childhood and young adulthood. And you're very protective, obviously, of your family members and not just my dad, of the players, of the team, and having that inside information. And I think I have memories as a young kid, just to take you back, like early 90s, 94, 95. My dad was the head coach of the Redskins, and being 10 years old, 11 years old. And we knew who the writers were and who the talk radio. This was before obviously social media and all of that coverage of sports, but it was the newspapers and it was the radio shows and it was the local news and local sports reporters. And I'd be at practice. My brothers and I and my mom, we'd go to practice and we'd see the writers covering the team and doing their job, and you'd know them because they were the local guys, and they'd say hi and they'd be friendly. And I'd be waiting for my dad outside of his office after practice to go home or whatever. Or my brothers and I would be running around waiting for him to be done. And the writers would be waiting for him outside the office to get a quote or to get a story or to get an interview. And at the Redskins at the time, that was Michael Wilbon. That was Tony Kornheiser once in a while if he was around. And they'd be friendly. And then maybe a few weeks later, they'd write something that wasn't very nice, or they'd say something on TV that wasn't very nice. And I'd be like, hey, wait a second. Like, I don't like him. I don't like that guy now. He was nice to me the other day and he said hi to me, but no, he's not my friend. And I think obviously that was a very specific era, and media coverage now has we're just so inundated with opinions and all of that. So I don't know what it feels like to be a coach's kid now and how different it is. But I know then it was hard, it was hard at times to read things and to see the way that people covered and the comments that people made. And there was a lot of angst. And even just from fans, like sitting in the stands and hearing fans say things. Like I was the kid that was like, if a fan yelled at a play call, like, oh, why would you call that play, Norv, or whatever. And I would be the one that was like, the receiver ran the wrong route. Like I would be the one that was chiming in, like, you don't even know what you're talking about. It wasn't the play call. Like that guy missed his block and this, sort of chiming in. And I think just what you said, there's so much in these teams and in these organizations and maybe more so then, but so much was held as private information. They didn't want you to know that so-and-so was struggling at practice. And that's why this happened in a game, or this guy had an injury and they don't want you to know that so-and, you know what I mean? Like all of that, like you said, the information that coaches can't say or aren't willing to say. And then the writers would make a judgment based on that or make an assumption or. So it's a complicated, it's like I've had a complicated relationship with sports media my whole life because, it is what it is.
Absolutely. I think also through that time, kind of when I was coming up, I felt like sports writing, a lot of people were trying to be funny kind of at the expense of people.
Right.
I felt like that was really one of the models of like especially columnist writing back then in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I kind of came up with that a little bit. And then there was a certain time when I think I shifted to, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And that was probably, in the last 25 years or so, but certainly in the last 10 to 15 years when I've been doing more of a national type of analysis, you're really liberated from that day to day. I think the day-to-day writer is incentivized to make a little bit of a splash, right? Day to day. You got to kind of try to find the angle, right? And the thing I love about what I get to do now is I don't have to do that. I can spend time to really find out how things work or do good research. But when you're having to come up with stuff every day and you've got, you're competing against people, I can totally see how that happens to where you take that quote gets a little bit, amplified or whatever, or it's just the context isn't exactly what it should be. I think that's happened forever.
Right.
This is a little different take on it. It's not the media, but it's talking about what you're talking about. and understanding what you're doing and having a feel for it, whatever. But when John Thompson retired from Georgetown, John Thompson, the great basketball coach, he was doing the morning radio show, and he came out to practice one afternoon, and it was in May during our mini camp stuff, and we happened to be working on our red zone that day, and we probably had 35 plays in the red zone. And I invited him to come behind the huddle. He stood back behind and watched and was, enjoying it and interacting. And, I tried to introduce him to some of the players. And then we went upstairs and had a little lunch and went in, and I said, we're going to go watch the tape if you want to stick around. He goes, oh yeah, I'd love to. He comes in and sits in the room, and we watch about 5 plays. And the red zone ends up being a lot like basketball. There's a lot of similarities, picks and height advantage and getting matchups like that and all that. And he acknowledged that, and then we were calling plays and going through it, and our offensive staff was in there, and he goes, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, and I have no idea what you're doing. It's not doing me good watching this tape. He was joking with us. He goes, I love getting to meet everybody, but I'm leaving. And he got up, and he became a friend of mine, so he could do that. But it's a little bit what you're saying. You think but there's details in there that I don't know that guys understand.
Hey, can I want to get Coach going on a good story here on that, because you got to tell the great Jerry Jones story about what play would you call. I love that story, and it illustrates this idea that when we're watching a game, like if I'm watching a game and they do something in the red zone that doesn't work, I've got 2 plays that I think, why didn't they do this? Right? That anybody does. Everybody has that opinion, and I love if you got this.
Well, Coach. Everyone has a better play when it's over. But we were actually, I was up with Coach Johnson, and we were up in the owner's box before. We were in New York playing the Jets late in the year, and we'd go up in the morning because our game was the late game, and it was 4th and 1 on the game we're watching, and I get a little tense and ornery a little bit, I guess, before games. You're not you're kind of got your game face on, and Jerry says to me, it's 4th and 1, the game's on the line. He goes, hey, Norv, what would you call here? And I might have used some language there. I said, how the F do I know what I'd call? I haven't studied this defense. I don't even know who's playing outside linebacker there. We don't make this stuff up, Jerry. We study it. We go in with a plan. We have a list of plays we want to run. And then finally, Jimmy says to me, settle down, Norm, just relax. I know you're getting ready for the game, but just relax. We're just having a conversation here,
I love I love that to the owner though, because nobody talks back to the owner. Everyone tiptoes around him. I would love to see that. So I thought that was great.
Well, it was a different relationship. One of the other one. Now that you're getting on this, and we got some conversation going, it drives me crazy because the announcers doing the games, when they get stuck and they don't know what to say, and I'm sure everyone gets that. But as soon as 2nd and 1 comes up, and people will watch this, who watch this will see it. As soon as 2nd and 1 comes up, particularly between the 40s, one of these guys go, this is a great time to take a shot. No, yeah, really. I mean, they take a shot. How do you know? They might be playing 40 yards deep. How do you know what they're doing?
Right.
Take a shot at 2nd and 1. You got a waist down. Every once in a while, you might want to just get the first down and keep going, and if the team's overplaying, it is a good time to take a shot. But you don't know that doing a game on TV and just throwing it out there all of a sudden.
You think the D coordinator doesn't know it's a decent time to take a shot? We should take a shot of whiskey every time they say you got to take a shot between the 40s, because, that's a good one. Are there any other ones like that really bug you? like the things that get
there's
said.
a lot of them, but we're
How long is this podcast going to be? How much time do we have? I mean, real time. Well, you know, Mike, because you get calls during games, right? That's from you'll get a call from my dad. Like if my dad and I are watching the same games in different, I'm at home and he's at his house, my parents' house. If something bad happens or crazy or good, good, we're cheering, but like something crazy or a stupid mistake or whatever, I'll just call him and he'll just be like, unbelievable. He won't even say hi. He'll just say, unbelievable. Can you believe? And we just go right into it because, I know what he's thinking. I'm thinking a version of it from being raised and hearing him, say all the things. But I've also sat next to him and seen he calls someone on the phone. Can you believe that? Hey, Mike, pull up a stat. How many times, you have your statistics computer. So it'll be like, pull up a stat. How many times has this happened in this stadium? Right? Isn't that the kind of question?
Oh yeah. That type of thing. I marvel at, I bet you could go through, certainly as a head coach, every game that was lost, and he could tell you like 3 things he'd be riled up over still. He could remember them in detail. Right. Yeah, that Thursday in practice, I told, I told so-and-so, this is, and then this thing, sure enough, it happened. It's amazing the ability to remember that stuff. It's lodged in there, isn't it, Coach?
Well, the things that happen that are in your control, if it doesn't go the way you want, but it goes according to plan, you can live with that. And then you give plays like what happened to Arizona the other day, where they complete a ball, they fumble it, the other team picks it up, he fumbles it. I mean, it's a circus, and Tennessee ends up with a score, and there's no way you should lose a game like that. But as my good friend, offensive line coach Tony Wise used to say, that ball has 2 points on it, and that's why it bounces different areas in different ways. It's not round. It's not a soccer ball. It's gonna take some funny bounces, and that one certainly did.
Well, I thought of you the other day when the same game. Remember when their runner fumbled the ball going in the 1 yard line?
When he held it out across,
Yeah. So it's 70 yards. The guy runs like 70 yards, but he needs to get 1 more yard to get the touchdown, and he kind of flips the ball. In fact, they fined the coach, Jonathan Gannon, $100,000 because he kind of went after the guy.
I know. Couldn't believe
it wasn't quite Woody Hayes, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of, Coach, your great Gus Frerotte story, because I was thinking someone's going to ask Jonathan Gannon, hey, do you show these guys videos around the league of this happening? Do you say, hey, make sure when you go across the goal line, don't fumble it? You knew that type of thing is coming. And if Steph, do you know the Frerotte? You got to know the Frerotte story. When he was asked about Gus Ferrotte's legendary play was, well, you set it up, Coach. I mean, it's an unbelievable story. But your answer,
which Gus Frerotte story are we going to tell?
It happened to Indianapolis the week before. They fumbled before he crossed the receiver. Indy did.
Oh, yeah.
And
Indy did this year.
Now you had their film to show your team.
Right.
I talked to Shane Steichen, and he said, because it happened to them last year with Taylor, he said they've shown the tape multiple times. They showed it in meetings. They show it. It's on a teaching reel they have for the people that handle the ball. And who knows why it happens? I was involved with one where Leon Lett started celebrating early and got the ball.
The famous Leon Lett.
But we were playing the New York Giants, and Gus Frerotte, we ran a bootleg, and they covered everybody, but they didn't keep him from running in. It was right at the end of the half, about a minute and a half left. So, and he goes in and scores, and I think they booed him a little bit early in the game, and he was frustrated. And we were winning the game, and he ran over to the wall and headbutted the wall. You were there, Steph.
Yes, I was there.
I couldn't see it happen because I was on the sideline, and a bunch of players got in the way. They're celebrating. We're running the extra point team out there. But he not only hit the wall, he hit the wall where cement post, the post that was cemented in to hold the wall up. So he did a double whammy. So we go in the locker room, and we had two different injuries. We had one guy they were telling me about, and then Bubba Tyre, our trainer, says, yeah, he goes, I don't think Gus is going to be able to play in the second half. I said, Gus, what are you talking about? What happened to Gus? And he goes, well, you didn't see it? I said, no, I didn't see it. See what? He says, well, he headbutted the wall and he sprained his neck. And I go, you got to be kidding me. So we end up tying the game. And when we're talking, and after, one of the writers said to me, this is what you're talking about, Steph. Sometimes they do get a little frustrating. He said to me, well, do you talk to your players about not headbutting the wall? I said, you know what? It's a good idea. I think next year in our training camp meetings, we will put in a thing in our book, and we'll show a picture and say, whatever you do after you score a touchdown, don't headbutt the wall, or especially where the post is. I mean, I think
make this stuff up.
That's got to be the only time anyone's ever seen that happen or done it. So
it was, yeah, that's a memorable one.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. I mean, talking about just, mistakes and things out of your control. I mean, one thing that's been the past couple weeks, I mean, we watch the Jets. My brother coaches, he's on staff at the Jets, and they have been in some close games. And they, not to say that this is determining a game or not determining a game, but bad calls or inconsistent officiating.
Yeah.
It plays a role, and you don't get a call. You can't say like, oh, this is why they lost the game, but it does determine the next play. It determines the down. It determines the yard line, all of those things. And so you can't say that it doesn't affect it. Right. And there've just been, I watch those games. I know the past 2 weeks, there have been some just missed things, like last week, the ball hitting the camp, I don't know if you watched or if you saw that.
Yeah. The Skywire.
Like, yeah. And it's just like, that's just a rule in the rule book. Like, if this happens, this is what happens next, and that's something that, okay, if you miss it on the field, then the booth upstairs is supposed to say, hey guys, like, we got to replay that down because we hit a camera that's, and it was just missed. And those are the types of things. And there are other things like the game before, just the inconsistency, calling unnecessary roughness or giving someone a penalty for a late hit. And then the next quarter, the same thing happening to the Jets, and it doesn't get called. And you're just like, the inconsistency in those things is really frustrating. And those are just in those games. I'm not watching every game as closely as I'm watching that one. But I can say, like, from being a coach's kid, my dad will probably, agree the same thing. Like, you get a letter sometimes from the league and from the officials on Monday that says, hey, so sorry, we were wrong about that call. And that we should have done this, or we should have given a 15-yard penalty or whatever. And the letters don't really mean anything, like the letters don't really help at that point. But I don't know.
The thing you're looking for, and I have great respect for what the officials do. And it's a really, really hard job, and it's getting harder because there are more plays that are being run that are harder to officiate, because the more passing game plays you have in, and teams are throwing the ball more and more and more, you have the potential for offensive holding, you have potential for defensive holding in the secondary, offensive pass interference, all the different things that go in. And then when the ball's in the air, we'd like to see that part of it being called consistently. And I don't see that happening. And there was a terrible pass interference call. I can't remember what game the other day, but two guys hit him before the ball got there, and they wave it off, and you're looking at that, and the thing we always used to say, if you were in there with 10 guys in the bar, 9 of them would have said that's pass interference. That that goes for something. But they work hard at it. They have, they bring in younger guys. They've had a lot of changes in the officiating. So there is a process going on, and hopefully it keeps getting more consistent. You can live with that.
Yeah.
I think we would on Mondays or in our meeting on Wednesday, we would give a report. These guys lead the league and call offensive holding on the line. These guys have called fewer pass interference calls than any group in the league. And, it shouldn't be that different in terms of throughout the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think people, if the world doesn't end in the next 100 years, I think 100 years from now, if they're still in the NFL, they'll look back on this quaint time when stockbrokers and high school principals, were officials. I just think those guys will defend that it's not a factor to not be full time because they love their setup, right? They get to make some decent money and have some real adrenaline and almost as close as you can be to playing the game down on the field. And then they get to go back and have their regular jobs. And I just don't, you can't tell me that if coach, when he was coaching, had a part-time job the rest of the week, that the team would be better off, that he would be good coaching, right? Or you couldn't tell if I had to do my column on Sunday, but I also, was an usher at the ball game.
Yeah.
That I would be as good. I would not be as good.
Yeah. No, that's true.
I think that is just a comical component of this that we just sort of, every once in a while you hear people bring up the drumbeat of, hey, these guys got to be full-time officials. The reason it's not is because they have a cover your butt culture. And they're you talk about coaches being criticized. These guys are criticized even more. Mm-hmm. And so I think they're all about, you even hear these guys on TV, they're former officials. For the most part, they're looking out for their guys on the field more than they are being critical, So I think that there's a whole culture around this that is so frustrating to the coaches because they do turn it over some, but most of these guys are going to be back next year, whether they're doing a great job or not. Yeah. And in coaching, you get fired even if you get fired for things way beyond your control, media narratives, things, and you may have done your best job of coaching that year and you get fired.
Right.
And so I don't know if it'll be a solution eventually. I always feel like this happened to me one time. I always felt like when I watched my kids' basketball games from the stands, I never missed a call. I could see it all. Yeah. One game, they didn't have the official show up and I had to go ref the game down there. I couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
I felt like I missed everything. I was asking the players, hey, was that out on you? Right. But I almost feel like we watched watching the game on TV or from the booth or something. If you were a coach, I feel like you could see some of these things better than those guys might be able to see them. But what do you think of that, Coach?
No, there's no question. That's what they've tried to do with the speeding up the replay and correct the obvious mistake. But you're right. You're down in there with all that going on. If you've ever, as a fan, if you've had the opportunity and have had friends on the sideline, it's a fast game. It is going fast. It's a lot different than sitting up in row 30 watching it. Those guys, they're athletic. They fly by you. They can run. They can jump. And those guys that are veteran players are really good at finding a way to hold, finding a way to use their body, screen someone off, those type of things. So it's not an easy job. As I said, I'm just looking for consistency.
Every summer for the last 12 years, I've talked to, now it's up to 50 coaches and executives in the league where, we take all of the veteran quarterbacks so to have a chance to start the coming season. Usually I start after the draft, and we'll go through all of them and we'll put them into, tiers from 1 being the best and 5 would be the worst. And there's different criteria for these tiers that I've kind of put together from talking to coaches over the years and just, hey, what is it that differentiates a 1 from a 2? So then I'll take those 50 ballots together and average them up. And this year in the top tier, we had Joe Burrow out, injured. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson made his debut up there in Tier 1, and Matthew Stafford was right on the border of 1 and 2. He just made it into 1. So the second tier was Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, C.J. Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, and Brock Purdy. But basically, it kind of becomes a market analysis of the quarterbacks and the opinions of the league, and it's really fun to talk about. So, I love to go through it, and it is fun to revisit kind of partway through the year and see what adds up and doesn't.
Well, the fun of it to me is it makes you think about each of these guys, and then you watch them and you tend to study them. And I think every quarterback now, if you're a starting quarterback in the league, with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions because of style of play, the way most teams are playing now, you're going to have a lot of production in the passing game. You're going to throw for a lot of yards. You're probably going to throw quite a few touchdown passes. To me, the thing that you have to separates these guys now is who has the fewest negative plays, who has the fewest sack fumbles, because fumbles are turnovers. They don't really, when people talk about this guy threw 7 interceptions, they don't say he lost 5 fumbles. That's part of playing quarterback. And then to me, as a guy, we put a guy in there in Tier 1, and then I've just been thinking about this, watching these guys. Okay, how many weeks out of 16 did he play at a Tier 1 level, and how many weeks did he play at a Tier 3 level? Now you got some guys in Tier 2 that, like I would say, a Baker Mayfield is playing in as good a level as you could be, a Tier 1 level, and he's gotten a lot cleaner with the ball. He's not as reckless with the ball. He avoids sacks. He beats the rush a great deal. So it's not the tier is a starting point and what people's opinion. And I think some people aren't open enough after they declare, well, he might be a Tier 2, but over the last 6 weeks, he's played better than anyone in the league. And I think you say that about Baker Mayfield, particularly the way he plays in the fourth quarter.
I agree. I think Baker Mayfield would probably be my MVP right now, because he's played, they've had up to, I think, 3 offensive linemen out. They've had, Mike Evans has been hurt, Chris Godwin, that's their top 2 receivers in the last few years. Now they have a great rookie this year, but those guys have been either out or they've had one of them, but not the other. And he's just really been able to produce. Went on the road last, week 5, had a huge game against Seattle. So I agree with you. I think he got 1 Tier 1 vote, 33 in Tier 2, and 12 in Tier 3, which is people who think he still risks the ball too much. So if he plays like this for the year, I mean, I think he's got to go at least to the top of Tier 2, don't you?
Well, that's no question. And if he plays like this the rest of the year, they're going to be in the playoffs and have a chance to go deep in the playoffs. But just the other night, Josh Allen played, and it wasn't his best game. And New England quarterback, the rookie, going blank on his name, he played out of his and he played out of his mind. And a month ago, Josh Allen was hands down MVP, and they were wondering what's wrong with Lamar. So this just is a moving thing that is a 17-week season, and there's going to be teams are going to have ups and downs and have some rough spots. Good teams are going to have some rough spots, and players, particularly quarterbacks, it's a week-to-week business for them. And to me, that's the hardest thing about playing quarterback. And you see a rookie come in and have 2 good games and people get excited. I think guys, when they finally have to play, when they get to play 17 games, I think they understand how hard the position is to play, both mentally and physically. It's extremely taxing, and it's extremely hard to play at the highest level throughout an extended period of time. And that's why I always appreciate the guys, not only did it for season, but then did it. Matthew Stafford, he's done it for 17 seasons, and whether it was with a team that wasn't as talented like Detroit or coming to the Rams, I appreciate that about a guy who, hey, week to week to week, here we go. Obviously, I was lucky to be around Philip Rivers, who was that way, played 17 years. Troy, there's some guys, Brad Johnson, who bounced around a little bit, but he just kept playing. And when I was in Washington and we went to the playoffs, beat Detroit in the playoffs, played a close game with Tampa, and Brad was our quarterback, and the owner and a couple of his guys that hung around with him said, well, I don't think we can win a Super Bowl with Brad Johnson. And after I left, they shipped him out to Tampa and went with Jeff George. And Jeff George got replaced in 5 weeks, and Brad Johnson won the Super Bowl in Tampa. So yep. I don't know that you can describe it to someone and say, absolutely, this is what it is.
Right. And like you guys,
so
like
much of the team around them,
early too. Dak is another one of those guys that's, for a long time been playing well and is still playing well. Dak Prescott, and another example of that.
Dak Prescott, really just needs some postseason success. I think the quarterback and the head coach are measured on a different standard because they do probably impact the game more than others do. And you'd think over time, if you're going to be somewhere for 10 years and be good, you'd make a bigger dent in the playoffs. So now they're going to have a hard time this year in Dallas because his defense isn't good.
Yeah.
And, you can't, it's very, very rare, even for the great quarterbacks, to have a bottom 5 defense, and then go all the way. It rarely, almost if ever happens. I mean, Mahomes kind of did it a few years ago, but you look at all those years, there's a reason Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls and Aaron Rodgers won 1 Super Bowl. It ain't because Brady's 7 times as good as Rodgers or Drew Brees or whoever these guys are that are the top Hall of Famers that don't win, or Philip Rivers.
Yeah.
It's the things that are around them. If you compare that guy with a great defense, top 10 defense every year like New England does, well, then you're going to go really far. And so that's my fear for Dak now is he's playing great. But they've had their window where their defense was better the last few years and they didn't get there. And now they're going to be hard pressed to be good on defense this year.
Yeah. Well, the thing I think is a key as a head coach, as a general manager, and as a staff, you look at your team, and the season lasts 4 months, a little over 4 months, and obviously Dallas started and they didn't play very well on defense. And I do believe every week they've gotten a little bit better. They had a disaster in Chicago, but I think you sell to your players, you sell to your staff, hey, the team that improves the most in the area that there might be a little short, is going to have a chance. And if we're going to continue to grow on offense, and we've got off to a good start, we're going to get better on a weekly basis defensively, and be at a point in December and January where we can put together a great plan for you guys, and then a great effort. And once you get into those games, I mean, we know it's you lose, you go home, and you put together a great plan, a great effort, and maybe you can create a little better efficiency on defense.
And kind of what I see too, Coach, is there's not great teams. All these teams have holes. There's not these dynastic teams. I know the Chiefs are in the championship every year, and they may be again this year. So I'm not selling them short. But when you watch the Chiefs each week, it's not a juggernaut, And I feel like there's been different times over the years, over the history of football, where if you were in the AFC in the 70s, well, sorry, the Steelers, the Dolphins, and the Raiders, if you're not one of those teams, you're going to hit your head against a wall like Gus Frerotte. And here, I don't see that in the league now. I think if you're a team that's just good, you might be able to hit it and go because these other teams all have issues, right? Baltimore's down, Buffalo's good, but not just a complete dominant team. I think there's opening.
There's a new group. There's a new group of emerging teams. Houston 2 years ago, you thought was going to be that team. They took a step back last year, even though they won a playoff game. But they're going to be good. You look at Tampa; they're emerging. Jacksonville the other night, they're emerging. There's some teams that, as I said, if they keep growing and getting better as they go, you're going to see some of those teams in December better than Kansas City, better than Baltimore, and that's the one thing about this league. Those teams have been at a high level for a long time. It's hard to sustain it. It's hard to sustain it between injuries, between free agency, between coaching. At some point, something's going to give.
And that's, I think, what's been exciting in this first, handful of weeks of the season. Like, there have been some good games. There have been some good, close games till the very end and overtime and some surprises like that, the teams, like you said, Dad, that have consistently been the teams that end up winning haven't won or have been close to losing. And I think that's been the fun thing for fans and people watching at home is like, yeah, maybe things are shifting a little bit, or maybe those teams end up, those sort of historically top teams do end up being the ones at the end of the season that win it. But it's definitely entertaining. Mike, I have a question. Go ahead, Dan.
One of the team that I didn't mention, and I need to, because they're playing as well as anybody, and that's Indianapolis Colts. And I have to mention it because obviously we're close friends, Steffi and I, with Shane Steichen, and Shane went to UNLV with my son, Steffi's brother Scott, and I hired him at the Chargers. He worked for me there for 4 or 5 years. I don't know what. He went to Cleveland with us for a year, and their offensive system is very similar to what we did in San Diego. I tell people, yeah, Shane was paying attention those 4 or 5 years he was with us, but they're a more complete team than some others because they can run the ball. The quarterback, if he keeps it up, is playing at a real high level, and defensively, they're good on defense, and I think they can keep getting better.
Yep.
So, Mike, I wanted to ask you, just because betting is such a big part of fandom right now, and watching games. How much this just occurred to me, and I thought you'd have maybe just an interesting point of view on it. How much does that factor into kind of how you're crafting your pieces and does it, or maybe it doesn't at all? Or is there any sort of awareness that you have to have working in your industry and in terms of giving the fans information they need? I know it's marked on a lot of the spread and all of that is marked in articles and stuff, but just as from a creator and creative point of view, as a writer, are you thinking about that?
Not really. I would advise any fan of a team to just bet on your team to lose every week as insurance. Whatever price you would pay for your team to win, that way you're happy paying it if they lose, and if they win, and you get some insurance on the other side. It's a big deal, and certainly we have people that write about gambling. And it doesn't really enter my mind. I think though, there's a lot of interest in the games generated by fantasy football and gambling. Not everybody is just as into football as we are, right?
No,
not everybody. People need a little bit of an extra incentive for them to watch it.
Yeah.
And I think that interest that they have, for whatever reason, bleeds over into interest in some of the things that I do too. They might find interesting.
Yeah.
I like the point spread data. I like having that because then you can go back and look at teams' record against the spread, or I like to look at the preseason Vegas win totals. That's just kind of a nice little barometer. Like, hey, who's exceeding what the market thought of them? Right, the market's a nice kind of independent arbiter. It's not my power rankings. It's not. It's just, hey, this is what someone was willing to put their money on, right? Somebody who does this, and we see these betting lines are amazing. Like that Chief game against Jacksonville was a 3.5-point spread. It's like a 4-point game at the end of the game. It's unbelievable how it comes together.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in it for the ways that I can analyze it more than, hey, you know what? Our readers are interested in it, so I'm going to do something with gambling. I don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe I'm a purist, but I do think with whether it's fantasy football or gambling, I think it has changed, fans, and just, I talk to people and they talk about, oh my God, I love football. Like, oh, I watch football, and like my fantasy team this, and I have so-and-so on my fantasy team. And I'm like, I don't care about your fantasy team. No one cares about your fantasy team.
True.
But it is like, it's really individualized, and, free agency did that, and other things did that in the league before fantasy football. But I think that sort of allegiance, a loyalty to a team or to a city or whatever has kind of dissipated. And it's about individual performances, and then even, a fan and their individual performance as a fantasy owner or whatever they call them, oh, my team is doing this, and I have this player on that team and that player on that team. And it just kind of has diluted it for me. But, But
the game has grown so much that these people have filled the tent of being, of the league here.
Right.
So it's not the exact type of interest I think we would want it. We would want everybody to just be a super fan of a team or something.
Right.
And it's also raised the level of vitriol, I think, so that you get people are a lot madder when you lose the game and they lose $1,000, right?
Right.
That's different than we just lost the game. So I don't like that component. And then also the component of everyone being on social media and connected in this way allows for, like I thought of you growing up as a kid, with your dad being the coach and the challenges of that. But if you were in a social media world, then like just being a student now coming up, just social media itself without sports.
Yeah.
Very difficult for kids and teens. And I think a lot of girls, it's just a very difficult thing for girls.
Yeah.
And then now your dad's the coach, and that's going on, right? People can find you,
right?
And they'll say terrible things to you.
Oh yeah.
I think it's there's a really unhealthy component to this that, if my kids are a little bit older now, they got it in the end. My kids are 24 and 20, going to be 21 here. So they had it in high school and stuff, but I think it's only gotten bigger and bigger. And I think I would have a real strategy now.
Yeah.
Around that with my kids. And I think like my kids will have that strategy because they know what they had to go. They know what it was like, and they've seen it on the ground level. So I think that'd be an interesting thing to me.
I have young kids that are on the, pre-social media access, but definitely we can take some, I'd love to hear your strategies offline. You can shoot me a text on any advice you have.
I don't know what I would do. I don't, it's easy to say I would just wall them off and say you can't do it, but that comes with a cost too, So I just think I'm tying this all into the gambling and the stakes and the accessibility of people and the opinions flowing.
Yeah. I mean, and it is, just, I don't, again, like I said earlier, I don't know. It's a different world now. And in some ways, to be a coach's kid or to be, I think like in some ways when I was growing up or when my brothers and I were growing up, and people ask me about this all the time. So I've, think about it. And I think that, in some ways it was maybe more intense because there wasn't anything else. And so like I lived in big football cities. We lived in Dallas, obviously, and we lived in the DC area. And DC is a really big football city, and or at least it was at the time that I was living there. I haven't lived there in a long time, so I don't know. But there wasn't other things going on. It wasn't like people were on social media or like all these other distractions. There was the Norv Turner coaches show, and he did a half-hour show talking about football on the local, whatever it was, ABC or something. And there was sports talk shows that were dedicated to talking about the team. And there were levels of that sort of by the time like people knew who we were, and just to kind of share with you and for people who might be interested, some of those sort of tidbits that people kind of always kind of think are funny, but I mean, funny, sad funny, but like when we were in the sort of end of my dad's time there, Dan Snyder was the owner, and it was very tumultuous. Dad, if you can chime in or not, well, as I'm telling this, but just, it was they were butting heads, and there were a lot of people in the DC area that were like, fire Norv. And there were a lot of people, that loved, and appreciated what he had done. And they were, had won the division and, had winning seasons and all of those things. And so, we were obviously on the side of supporting my dad and everything he had done and the team. But, there was a group of people and media people that wanted him fired. And there was a contest on the radio, and I was 16 years old, of who was going to put the padlock on the Turner's moving van. And that was like, was the contest. And so I'm like, when people ask me, oh, what was it like to grow up, as a coach's kid and with your dad being a coach and during that time? And I'm like, there was a contest on the radio of who was going to put the padlock on and people knew where we lived. And I remember when I did my driving test, as a student driver, you had to ride with this company and drive the car back home. And there was another kid in the car who was about to start his lesson, and we pull into the neighborhood, and I didn't know the kid. It wasn't someone I went to school with, but, and we pull down my street, and he goes, oh, Norv Turner lives here and in this neighborhood. And I'm just like driving, doing my lesson, and the teacher sitting next to me, and I pull up into our driveway, and he goes, this is Norv Turner's house. And I'm like, yeah, hi, I'm his daughter. Thanks, bye. And I get out of the car. But it was like, that's weird. Like, that was weird. I didn't know this kid. He was somebody, but that, and so that's just like part of what goes with being, the child.
And you move a lot too. Then you move around to different places too,
Yeah. And then
I think my strategy would be, and I come from, both my parents are public school teachers, administrators, but I think I would probably go with a smaller private school would be my strategy, because I think some of the community around the kids can be a little bit more supportive unconditionally.
Yeah.
That's been our experience a little bit with our kids. So, I'm not an expert on that, but I sure would try to have a strategy.
Social media stuff. Yeah. But
or just and just a smaller group of, people would seem to possibly be better for me. So.
Yeah.
I tell you, just to get back to it, and does it hit me, because it is the biggest thing to me about the gambling, the fantasy football, all these different things. It's put a lot more attention. I'm not saying pressure, because I think the officials are going to do their job. I don't think they're concerned about the point spread and all that. But when officials make a call that costs, like Steph, like you said, I used to get a letter on Monday or Tuesday saying, sorry, we missed this call. And when you looked at it and said, well, if they would have called it right, it would have given us a really good chance to win the game. Well, we know that happens every game. And like you said, a guy that's got money on it, and all of a sudden there's a questionable call. There's something late in the game. It's a pass that's caught. They call it. They say it wasn't. Whatever those different things. It just brings more attention to the officiating and frustration to the fans. And that's one of the negatives of the gambling, the fantasy. That there's good things about it, but that is one of the negatives.
Yeah. And then people get it. We live in this world anyway where people are quick to go to conspiracy theory, this or that. So I think one of the things that's actually been helpful for the league this year is that the Chiefs haven't won every close game. The Chiefs went 11-0 last year in games decided by one score. Yeah. It's impossible. And they're like 0-3 this year. So I think that's actually backed off some. Like if they had magically won all these games, like if they had won that game against Jacksonville when there was that play, remember, that could have been pass interference. Right. It was debatable if he was past 5 yards or whatever, but it was the receiver got taken out and Jacksonville threw an interception.
Yeah.
Then all
the play.
You're
Yeah.
right. It's
If
like
the Chiefs had won that game and we're undefeated now this year, that whole drumbeat would be going about the integrity of the league and the officials are in on the take because I spent half last
the
year.
narrative would be the NFL is rigged and
Yep.
the Chiefs are winning because of Taylor Swift. That's what the narrative would be.
Yeah,
if that,
I'm glad it's not. I mean, nothing against the Chiefs. I mean, I'm sure they wish they were winning, but it's actually been refreshing to me to not have them just automatically win somehow when they shouldn't even deserve to win the game, which happened last year some of the times. You know,
Right.
it's like, oh
No
my gosh.
question. And I think that's what I'm alluding to. I think as we go through, we're basically a third of the way through the season. We go through the next 2/3. There's going to be some teams emerge. As I said, I really believe this, and there's going to be some new teams in the playoffs, some new teams winning their division or being good enough to qualify for the playoffs. And there's going to be some teams that we've seen there that have won a lot of close games that have made it and found a way. And when the season started, it goes automatically. These teams are going to win their division. These teams are going to playoffs. And I think after 5 games, you look and say, hey, wait a minute. This is going to be very much contested. And a lot of divisions are in that position right now, or it's going to be extremely contested and be right down to the wire. Go down to those last 2 or 3 games to see who wins these divisions and who qualifies to go to the playoffs as a wild card team.
All right, you guys. Well, we are going to go ahead and wrap up here. Really quickly before we let you go, Mike, can I just ask you, because we ask everybody at the end of the show, what would you do if you didn't work in football? What would you have done?
If I wasn't covering sports, I might have gone into education in some way. You know, my dad was a vice principal of a high school. His dad was the dean of education at Cal State LA, years ago.
Wow.
My mom was a teacher. My sister's a teacher. That's one thing there's a part of me that misses, and I know, Coach, you get this from coaching, like just being around people and kind of younger people and having a chance to influence and mentor them.
Mm-hmm.
That really appeals to me, and my job is so fun. Like I'm one of those things where almost wherever I go, the other guys wish they had my job, wow, you've been to these Super Bowl, you do all this. And I love it. But there is a part of me that would really like to do something like that. And that's why I'm really happy. My kids have been involved in coaching and like it. And one of them may become a teacher. So there's a real part of me that could have easily done that.
Yeah. All right.
I thought for sure you were going to say you would have gone on the golf tour. So, start with
as a caddy. I'd be a great caddy.
Just worked your way up. I was really thinking, as you're saying it, if I had met you 20 years ago and you didn't want to be a writer, I would have brought you in as an analyst. I would have had you in the office next to mine. And Mike, what'd you tell me 5 years ago? What were they doing on third down? And can we put that together? All the different things you come up with. It's incredible.
I love doing the research, but Coach, it's much better now because there's no head coach looking at the parking lot to see if I peel out of here at whatever time to go to my kid's game. I can do this. I do these types of things for tons of coaches. They're always like, hey, what do you got for this? Or I send stuff to people that I know just unsolicited, like, hey, look at this. Isn't this interesting? And then they'll hit me back and say, yeah, it is. But what about this? That's how I always get a little bit smarter. So I get to kind of do that without having any of the downside, which is, I think it would drive me crazy in a building. All the politics, all of the agendas. People want to use that stuff for agendas in the building, and try to get you to come up with a narrative for them, and I love not having to do that. I think I would have a hard time doing it. I haven't worked in an office, Coach, in 30 years. 1995 was the last time I was in an office. Now I have my own office here, but
yeah, but you have your freedom to do what you want.
I could take off for the next 2 hours and then just work tonight.
Yeah.
If I wanted to, and no one's going to be like, hey, where did Sando go?
Right.
And I love that. I got the perfect setup right now.
Yeah. Well, we could talk, we can go on for a couple more hours because one of the things that's frustrating now, which is harder, is the head coaches. There's a lot of people in the front office that want to coach. There's an owner, there's a general manager, the assistant general manager. There's people that have. There's your analytics guy, and the reason you get the job as a head coach is to go coach the team and be the head coach. And I know some of the coaches I visit with, it's frustrating. You didn't have an office for 30 years, and you got to do what you wanted to. And I'm sure you had someone occasionally dropping a hint or letting you know what they wanted, but it's a challenge now. It's a complete challenge being the head coach in this league.
Yeah, if we do this again, I think that'd be a fun template to go on. So who was the owner of the Redskins after Jack Kent Cook died, and then before Snyder bought it? Was there somebody?
Well, Jack Kent Cook, he hired me, and
it was his
one
son.
of the reasons I went there was because of him, and obviously the Redskins. And then his son, John Cook, had the team and was trying to purchase it. And Mr. Cook died in March of 97, and John Cook was outbid by Dan Snyder in April, May, June of 99. 99.
The reason I was thinking, because you've worked 7 years when Spanos owned the team, 6 when Georgia owned the team, 3 with Jerry, 3 with the Wilfs, 3 with Jack Kent Cook when he was alive, 2 with Cook heirs or whatever, 2 with Huizenga, 2 with Snyder, 2 with Al Davis, 2 with Tepper, 1 with Mark Davis, 1 with Jimmy Haslam, and 1 with DeBartolo. That's all.
Are you saying I should write a book?
Yeah, I'm saying just a quick story on each one of those, or just how those owners are different, or the would really be a fun. Yeah, it could be a book, but it could be a template for a podcast too.
Well,
we're trying to get an invite back. We don't pay much here.
That's okay.
I think we should have you back, Sando. I think we should have you back later, definitely later in the season, and sort of check in on some of these teams and the tiers, see how our quarterbacks are doing, if they're true to their tiers. And we can throw in some owner stories. We have a couple episodes coming up where we talk about some owner stories. So you'll have to tune into those.
Love it.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And we would love to have you back. So I hope that.
Great. Just let me know.
Okay.
Anytime.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
well, thank you guys for tuning in. Remember to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok, where we post fun clips and giveaways, starting with a game day snack basket provided by Melissa's Produce. We'll see you on the next one.